Greetings viewers, EricTheCarGuy here. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to replace U-joints. It just so happens I need to swap ends on these axles, and I figure while I'm in the process of doing that, I might as well do a video about how to swap out U-joints. Watch and learn. Before we get started, let's talk a little bit about the different types of U-joints that you'll encounter when you do something like this. Some of them have a snap ring on the outside like this one does, so we're fortunate with that because I think they're some of the easier ones. Sometimes they have a snap ring on the inside, which would be in here. And sometimes what you might see is a little dot of wax on the end. And that's usually on GM vehicles. And if you see that little dot of wax, what you've got to do before you even get started is heat that up, because that's a plastic seal that holds it into place. So you have to get out a torch and heat that up ahead of time. I'm also going to show you two different methods to replace these U-joints. One method, I will be using the purpose-built tool for this very thing. Works really great. However, if you don't have this purpose-built tool, which you can probably get from your auto parts store for free, in other words, you pay for the tool, when you return it, you get your money back, or a socket of the appropriate size and a bench vise will also do the same thing. I'm going to use some needle nose pliers to remove these. Before I do, try a little bit of penetrating oil, just to get things started. And since I'm removing this entire joint, I'm just going to remove all 4 snap rings with a pair of needle nose pliers. And the new joint came with new snap rings, so don't worry if these get destroyed. Cool. Sometimes you might need to get in there with a hammer and knock them around a little bit. I'll start by showing the socket method, and I forgot to mention you'll need another socket of a larger size that the U-joint can slip into. In this case, I have one that is 1 1/16 inches. We'll need one socket that we're going to use as a receptacle, and another socket that we're going to use to push it through. And you just crank down on the vise until it pushes all the way through. Really make sure that you have the receiving side lined up so that it has a place to go. And I'm going to put a breaker bar on my vise, well, if I need to. Penetrating oil also helps here. Might as well get started on the other side too. It's moving. The more you do it, the easier it gets. You can just pull the cup right off the end there. Now that you've removed the cup, you can remove the piece that you came for, which this is the piece that I came for. And you can take off the other cup if you like. There's a bunch of little needle bearings down in there. Those may fall out. When these go bad, they get all rusty, the whole thing turns orange. Now we'll do this one. It doesn't look like it's moving, so I'm going to just see if it's going into that receptacle. If it catches on here and gets on the socket, it's going to be bad. But now I know it's coming part way through. It's not making contact. I don't feel bad about being paranoid, because with this aluminum drive shaft, I could really screw it up. And now it's moving so much easier. There you go. That one's out. And you just took out a U-joint. Yay, I'm a U-joint. Yay. I'm going to take an extra step. You don't have to use power tools for this. A piece of, well, sandpaper, or even better, what's called crocus cloth would be a good option for just cleaning out these bores before you put the new ones in. If you have snap ring lands like these do, see what you can do to maybe get a pocket screwdriver in there and clean those out also before you put the new joint in. joint. Remove all of the caps and keep them someplace where they won't get dirty. If you have a U-joint with a Zerk fitting on the inside here, it's either going to be pointed, in one direction, this way or this way. Always point it towards the drive shaft. That way you'll be able to get to it, because if you don't point it towards the drive shaft, then you're not going to be able to get to that fitting once you've got it all together, and that sucks. But the trick is, point the Zerk fitting towards the drive shaft always. Let's stick one in here. We can just get this in far enough, because really that's what we need to do so that we can install the snap ring. So I'll do these one at a time, but sometimes I will do them all at once. A little bit farther. More. Now that the cup is seated down in there, and install the snap ring. Make sure it clips. Now it's time to take another cup. And they go in a lot easier than they come out. The trick here is to know when to stop. And that might be it. When to stop is when it hits the snap ring. So if you can put the snap ring in, you're done. Now that it's in place and both snap rings are in, I like to just tap around the outside of it with a hammer. On this aluminum, I need to be careful because I don't want to damage the aluminum, but on the steel type, you can really hit on it. And that helps it settle into place. So you've just compressed everything, it helps things sort of relax a little bit. It actually moves a bit easier. Now I want to use this yoke on that axle. So for this one, I'm going to use the tool to get the yoke off. And that way you'll be able to see an alternative method to what I just showed you. Starts with snap rings just like it did before, and penetrating oil. Well, I just need the yoke, so I'll just be doing these two. The principles employed with this tool are exactly the same as it was with the sockets and the vise, except for we're not using a socket and a vise. This is the threaded portion here. We'll push on the end of the cup, and this open end here will act as a receptacle. And since it's large enough for the joint to pass through, we just install it just like this. This might work if, you're out in the field, you don't have any other options. But once again, I can't stress enough, be sure that this is going into something and not pushing against the tool or the vise, because if it is, stop, start over. Something got hung up somewhere. At least it felt like it did. There we go. Somehow he got unlined up. See how it's not lined up there? Just need to sort of knock it back into place. It's not that difficult just to push this on through, so I'm gonna do just that. And with these aluminum drive shafts, I'm just barely putting any pressure, I'm just holding it. You can really damage these, so just see, barely on there. Some are tight like this, sometimes you have to push both sides off. Not a big deal. Tool gets used the same, it's just you're not pressing in a new cup or pressing out an old one. It's hardly any effort at all until I get the end there where the snap ring land is. In fact, I'm doing this all by hand. Maybe I can plier this one out. This is why I like the type with a snap ring. They seem to be less trouble than most. I got the yoke I wanted. Gonna clean this out just like I did before. I only wanted the yoke off this shaft, but say you're just swapping things around and you don't need to replace U-joints and you just need to keep them around. Well, I just took the 2 cups that I just took off of here. Got a little bit of air in them. We'll try to make sure those needle bearings don't fall in like it feels like something's happening here. Yeah, one of them fell out. If one of them falls out like this one did, just put it back into place, but don't try and force it. And that's with new or old U-joints. The grease helps them line back up. There we are. So once you've got them on there, a good way to keep them in place, some kind of tape. Many people use masking tape, but this will keep them from coming apart and barfing out needle bearings everywhere. While cleaning, I found this burr that was caused by the shoulder of the U-joint coming up here into contact with the inside of the yoke. Want to try to get rid of these burrs. I've got a file here before you reassemble. We're now clean and deburred. Same process as before. Honestly, I don't recommend the use of an impact at this point. When you're doing assembly, I recommend hand tools. Just want to get it down in there past that snap ring. It's a pretty loose yoke here. May need to tap the snap ring into place. Definitely make sure it's seated in its groove. Same thing as before. We've replaced the U-joint. On this type of U-joint that has a Zerk fitting that goes into one of the bearing caps, there's a special snap ring you install on there so that it doesn't obstruct where to put the Zerk fitting. Some of these U-joints are lubricated for life. So in other words, they have all the lubrication they're going to need. There's no provisions for adding any additional lubricants. Just install those. Don't add any additional lubricants. You don't want to mix lubricants. On this type with the Zerk fittings, once you get it installed in the vehicle, you can add lubrication then. A couple of things I want to add here. This centerpiece here is called the trunnion. These are called the bearing cups. Now, if you're going to reuse these, make sure you put them back onto the same end that you took them off of. Very important. I have shown you 2 methods of U-joint replacement: vise and a couple of sockets, and a special tool. Both work well. As you saw when I used power tools on this, there could be some damage, so be careful. Using hand tools, not a problem. I was just trying to get it done a little bit quicker. Take your time. Zerk fittings always point towards the drive shaft. Outside of that, if you have additional automotive questions, I'd ask you to head over to EricTheCarGuy.com. I'll put a link in the description to that, as well as other useful information for you, so please check there if you have automotive and other questions. Google+, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, if you wish to connect with me socially. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I'll see you next time. Bye.